Rafe Esquith introduces his book, There Are No Shortcuts, with a quote by Paul Simon that I'm sure we can all relate to. In the clearing stands a boxer, and a fighter by his trade, and he carries the reminders of every glove that laid him down, or cut him, till he cried out. In his anger and his shame, I am leaving, but the fighter still remains. He compared the quote to his father. Being a boxer, he was always answering the bell. No one could knock him down and keep him down. I immediately felt a connection with Rafe when he then said that the reason he teaches is because his mother raised him to help others. I see that in myself because I'm constantly offering a helping hand, and I get that from my mother. Rafe said, "We teachers are all boxers. We get hit a lot. I've been knocked down so many times I'm often woozy." This is so true. My closest mom friend came home from work one day last year, and she seemed so distraught. She is a teacher, and one of the parent-teacher conferences she had didn't go so well. The parents did not agree with her suggestion, and they were not too polite. It upset her, but it did not keep her from going back to school the next day to continue her job of being the best first grade teacher she could possibly be for her students. Rafe says the difference between the best ones and the others is that the best ones get up to answer the bell. May you always get up. It is a child ringing that bell, and he needs your help.
In Chapter 1 of Rafe Esquith's book, titled Curtains, he introduces his objectives. He says that this book is meant to be a reminder of what public education can be, and he wants to give hope to young teachers who would like to run against the wind but are afraid of the consequences. He then talks about our public schools and how they are failing. He poses this question: why are schools failing? His answer: many districts are trying to take charge of education by forcing all teachers to use uniform lesson plans. All students learn the same material at the same pace. Then Rafe begins to describe his own personal journey. He describes a few bumps in the road, such as an incident when he decided to break the rules as a student teacher and take a Saturday field trip. As a result, he had to repeat his 6 months of student teaching. Then, after graduating, Rafe is assigned to teach at a middle-class school and not an economically disadvantaged one he was hoping for. The students were very fortunate and took a lot for granted. Scores were all that really mattered, and if bending the rules would make them better, then Rafe was expected to do just that. After a disagreement with his principal and his overall unhappiness with his job, Rafe was offered an opportunity he just couldn't refuse. He agreed to transfer to another school, nicknamed the Jungle. It was going to be a challenge, but Rafe was ready, or at least he thought. He knew the teaching would be tough, but he wasn't really prepared for the hand he was dealt. It was an overcrowded school with horrifying test scores, and hardly none of his students spoke English as their first language at home. It seemed that Rafe has made a huge mistake, but he says that he has never regretted the path of least resistance.
Chapter 2. Who Are You? Rafe Esquith begins by discussing his teaching career. He seemed to be very well liked by his co-workers and students. He was popular with the kids and could play their music on his guitar. He felt like he was the teacher who was with it and could relate to the kids. When people would ask him why he had such a commitment to his students, he would reply, "Because one day I want to walk down the street and people will say, 'There goes Rafe. He's the best teacher I ever saw.'" He told this to another teacher, and she told them that he was the most moronic thing I've ever heard. He thought about what she said and realized he had missed the mark. He ended up marrying her, and he asked himself, "What is my mission?" Now he changed his focus, and he began to think how he could be a better teacher. He felt like his students were working harder than ever before, but he didn't think their work ethics were good. He noticed the students were too pleased with their efforts. If they got most of the work right, they were pleased. Rafe began to realize his students had become accustomed to a fast food society. We have an instant everything at our fingertips. He noticed the sixth graders were struggling with algebra, and he realized it wasn't that they weren't intelligent, but they didn't have the mental capabilities to master the algebra. They weren't used to the challenge and instant gratification. Algebra takes lots of hard work. Now that he knows the problem, he thought, how am I going to fix it? After attending a cello concerto one night, one of his students asked the cellist, "How can you make music sound so good?" He replied, "There are no shortcuts." This struck a chord with Mr. Asquith, whose students were always looking for a shortcut. This changed everything for him and his students. If you want to be a better teacher, then you will have to work longer hours. And that is just what he and his students did. He inspired his students so much they started coming to school at 6:30 to practice their algebra. They sacrificed doing things they used to do because they were on a mission to prove themselves that they could do this. At the end of the year, they all passed a test that would be hard for ninth graders. Other teachers began to adopt this idea: there are no shortcuts. A new school was started in Houston, and they used this slogan as well. Years later, a former student named Kevin returned to thank him. Kevin told Rafe it was him who inspired him to be what he is today. Kevin was facing obstacles and difficulties at home. Teachers were not giving him a chance and treating him unfair. The only one Kevin thought believed in him was Rafe. Kevin was very withdrawn and stuttered. Rafe believed he was brilliant, but previous teachers never commented on how smart he was, only how quiet and withdrawn he was. Rafe taught him how to play chess, and he easily was the best chess player he had ever encountered. Kevin went on to be one of the finest high school chess players in the nation. He scored a perfect score for math on his SAT. His GPA was a 3.45. Kevin attributed this success to Rafe and his motto. Kevin gave a speech to Rafe's class and told them the secret to his success was, there are no shortcuts. Rafe, as you could imagine, was overwhelmed with happiness.
In his epilogue, he talks about how he received a phone call one night from a little girl who ran away from her abusive family situation. She was now living with a man, only being 14. She was a very gifted musician and getting a scholarship to a fine music academy. His orchestra and chorus were at the bottom of the list for extra expenses. The staff had voted that making copies was more important than those two things, a school psychologist and new textbooks. Only the school nurse was ranked above the copy machine. Then, his song that he had chosen for his multicultural day the next week had been rejected. After 11 hours of work that day, the class rushed out to go home. On this evening, he was considering whether teaching was noble or just a wasted life. But Danny and Karen, who happened to be the two stars of the production, had stayed until past 6 o'clock to help clean up. Danny was the most brilliant boy, best looking, best student, most talented musician, but he was also slightly arrogant and temperamental, who on some days became impatient and a little hard on his classmates. Karen was quiet, brilliant artist with soft facial features that hid an inner toughness known only to those closest to her. Every girl loved Danny and admired his good looks and his talent except Karen, which is who Danny was in love with. He would write her letters, bought her presents, he did everything he could think of to win her. She doesn't like him because she wants her boyfriend to be nice to everyone, and Danny isn't nice to everyone. Rafe asked Karen how she had gotten so smart, and she said because he was her teacher. That made him have all the energy in the world, and it was after 7. He thinks the next 20 years in the classroom will be even better.
Prologue, Abigail Millars.
Chapter 1, Mary Quarterpassi.
Chapter 2, Kim Templeton.
Epilogue, Brittany Hobb.